Hi, and welcome to the Market Navigator channel. My name is Corey, and I'm going to teach you how to build a robust stock portfolio tracker that allows you to track all of your stocks and other securities across all of your portfolios. This can include your retirement accounts and individual brokerage accounts that you may have with different brokerages. The end goal will consolidate all of your holdings into a single view that allows you to quickly see your highest performing and lowest performing stocks. This will be the first in a series of tutorials that will each be approximately 10 to 20-minute videos that cover a different topic in the journey of building a beautiful yet functional portfolio tracker. So let's get started. Here's an example of what we'll build. This is my portfolio tracker, which has smart automation built into it, which will allow you to quickly visualize your individual portfolio performance across different categories such as investments and retirement accounts. You'll see that there's a chart which allows you to capture daily change in a nice graph form with a trend line. You'll also see at a quick glance your cost basis and the current market value for each of the different portfolios, your daily change, and your total gains and losses. You can also check out more detailed view of your portfolios, which contain individual holdings and fundamentals about each, such as quantity, cost basis, market value, total gains and losses, 52-week high and low for that security. And you'll also finally notice that there is a dividends received column, which is tracked in dollar amounts rather than dividend yield percents. And we'll get into that in future videos, but basically we're leveraging external APIs to do that. To build this tracker, we'll be using Google Sheets. Google Sheets is very similar to Microsoft Excel, except it has additional functionality such as the Google Finance API or function, which allows us to quickly pull in data from markets. The Google Finance function uses a particular notation in order to capture information about each stock. You'll notice that here in the ticker column A. The notation is market, such as NASDAQ, security. And the reason that the Google Finance function does this is because there might be ticker symbols that are the same across different markets. And that way you can be sure that you're capturing the right data for the right stocks that you own. By doing that, you can obtain the name of a particular security. You can also capture the market value, the current price for that particular security. And using that data, you can also do some math on your portfolio in order to figure out your daily and total gains and losses. In future videos, we'll show you how to build a 52-week high and low meter or chart that leverages the sparkline functionality within Google Sheets. And finally, as discussed earlier, we'll walk through using external APIs to pull in dividends data to figure out how much you're actually making in dividends from a particular stock. If you like what you saw or heard, subscribe now down below so you can get notified every time I post a new video and every time we take the next step in developing a more beautiful and more functional portfolio tracker. To get started, open up a new Google Sheet. To do that, you type in sheets.google.com. To create a new one, you click this new blank button here. And you'll be taken to a blank canvas where we're going to start building out this beautiful stock tracker. Let's go ahead and name this Lesson 1. To begin, let's plan out what we're going to need for this portfolio tracker. That means let's think about the fundamentals that we'd like to track within each of our portfolios. To start off with, we're going to need to capture the ticker symbol for each of the stocks or each of the holdings within our portfolios. Next, we're going to use the Google Finance function within Google Sheets to convert that ticker symbol into an easily human understandable name. We'll also need to tell Google Finance how many of each holding we have. So we need a quantity column. Similarly, we'll need to track our cost basis for each stock. And based on our quantity and cost basis, we can figure out our total cost basis. Using the Google Finance function, we'll also be able to determine what the current market value of a particular holding is. And again, using the quantity and market value columns, we'll be able to determine the total market value. And using those previous fundamentals, we'll also be able to figure out our total gains and losses in dollars, and also our total gains and losses in percentages. And finally, we'll add a nice column that allows us to quickly link to googlefinance.com, which contains fundamentals about each stock and nice news and research. Cool. So let's bold these up and create headers. So let's start with a random stock. Let's do Apple. If you remember from earlier, we talked about the notation that the Google Finance function expects when calculating or retrieving fundamentals about each holding. And that is the market. So I know that the Apple stock is traded on the NASDAQ market, so we can type in NASDAQ, colon, and the Apple ticker symbol, which is AAPL. Cool. So let's have some fun. So in order to turn this ticker symbol into a human understandable name, we need to use a function that is built into Google Sheets called the Google Finance function. In order to use functions within Google Sheets, or Excel for that matter, you use the equal sign notation, which lets Google Sheets know that you're going to use a function. So we type in equal sign, and then we type in Google Finance. And we'd put a opening parentheses, which lets Google Finance know that we're starting the function now. And the first time that you do this, you'll notice that helpful documentation comes up, which lets you know how to use this particular function. So you'll notice here that the first parameter or first thing that Google Finance is looking for is a ticker symbol, and that's noted by the green text here. In order to input that ticker symbol into this function, all we have to do is reference this cell that contains the Apple ticker symbol. In order to do that, you can just click it, and it pre-populates A2, which is the cell that this Apple ticker symbol is held in. After you get in the ticker symbol, you put a comma, which lets Google Finance know that now it's ready for the next parameter, which is the attribute that you're requesting. In this case, we're requesting the name attribute, which we can call by putting an open quotation mark and type in name. We close that quotation mark, and we end the parentheses, and that's our first Google Finance function. There you go. So now you'll see it populated, using this ticker symbol, it populated Apple Inc., which is the name that Apple is traded under. Cool. So the quantity and cost basis columns will have to be a manual column because that's what you're actually holding in your different portfolios. So for example, if I owned 2 shares of Apple and I bought them, aka my cost basis, I bought these shares each at, let's just say, $218. That's my quantity and cost basis column. And these will be populated based on your actual holdings within your actual portfolio. So you'll have to go into your brokerage accounts online and determine how much of each stock you own and what you paid for it, which might be split across different tax lots. So do your research there. Next, we'll calculate the total cost basis. And this is a function of multiplying the quantity owned by the cost basis in order to understand how much money you actually have in that particular holding. In order to do that, again, we'll use a function. This time, it's a simple arithmetic function. Remember, use the equal sign to denote that you're trying to use a function within Google Sheets. And you can click a cell to reference that cell in that function. So for in this case, we need to reference D2, which is the cost basis for that particular stock. And we want to multiply, in other words, using the asterisk symbol, we want to multiply against the quantity owned. If we hit enter, there's our total cost basis. Now, if we want to know what the current market value of each individual share of Apple is, we can again use an equal sign, type in Google Finance, and again we want to use the ticker symbol Apple. Let's put a comma. The attribute that we want to use here is price, and that's actually shown here in the documentation. The price notation will give us the current market price for the particular stock that we're looking at, in this case Apple. So with that, we should get a current price. All right. Similar to the total cost basis column, column E, we're going to calculate the total market value by multiplying column F, the 247.74, by the quantity owned, which will give us the total market value, or how much our current holding is worth at this very moment. So we'll do equal sign to trigger a function. In this case, again, we're going to do an arithmetic function. We're going to take cell F2 and multiply that by C2, which is the quantity owned, which will tell us what our total current market value is. Great. In order to capture our total gains and losses, this is another simple arithmetic function where we're going to get the difference between our total cost basis and our total market value. In order to do that, again, we want to do an equal sign to trigger a function. We'll click G2, which is the total market value, and we'll subtract that by cell E2, which is the total cost basis, which will give us the total gain or total losses for that particular holding. In this case, because we have a good cost basis of $218.99 for each share, and the current market value is $247.74, we were making money. And we've made $57 in this case. Before we go any further, I want to make a note about formatting cells and the numbers within those cells. In this case, we have a number of cells that have numbers in them, and we want to format them appropriately so that we know what sort of data is held within them. In this case, cells D through H are all dollar amounts, and we should format them appropriately. In order to do that, we can highlight those cells that are dollar amounts, and we can click this dollar symbol, which will format those numbers as currency. Cool. So it automatically adds a dollar sign to each of these cells. So now we don't have to worry about adding our own dollar signs. It'll automatically do that for us. So moving forward, we want to calculate the total gains and losses as a percent value. To do that, we'll use another function. So an equal sign for a function. We want to take the current market value and subtract that by, and using the dash or hyphen symbol, it's a subtraction symbol. We want to subtract that by our total cost basis. Now, because of order operations, we want to actually add parentheses around these so that this function gets calculated first because it's in parentheses. The next thing that we want to do is divide the result of F2 minus D2, or the market value minus cost basis. We want to divide that by cell D2, which is the cost basis. And what this will result in is a percent, or decimal value, which we can convert to percentages using the number format as percent. And to do that, we click the cell, and we click this little percent symbol, which will format that as a percent. So in this case, We are up on Apple from when we originally bought it, 13%. Cool. Finally, we want to add a link to the Google Finance page for Apple. So in addition to being a function or formula within Google Sheets, Google Finance is also a standalone website which contains fundamentals and information about each stock that you might own. In fact, it includes stocks from the entire universe of stocks that are traded on all international markets. And it could be a good research tool for you to view fundamentals, news, performance, and even analyst ratings on each particular stock that you might own or might be interested in. So let's go ahead and check that out. Let's create a new tab here. And let's go to google.com. And let's actually search for Apple stock. All right, so we see a market summary here, which is the first result for our search of Apple stock. And if we click this financial news, comparisons, and more down here, it'll actually be taken to Google Finance, which is a separate area of Google that allows you to do research on a particular stock that you search. So here's the Apple page on Google Finance. You'll see there's a chart, and you can change the chart to show different periods of time. It also shows you all different sorts of fundamentals. It'll show you comparisons, industry peers, quarterly financials, related markets, and also market news, which can be helpful when you're trying to understand movements in the market. So if we want to link to this, we can copy the URL that's listed up in the address bar up here. What we really need is the URL from the HTTPS to the end of the ticker symbol, in this case NASDAQ Apple. So we'll give that a copy, and we'll come back over to our Google Sheet that we're working on, and we'll paste that URL in here, and we'll hit enter. So Google Sheets will actually turn that URL that you pasted in here into a link, a clickable link. But we don't really want to have this whole URL in there all the time. So what we can do is we can right-click that cell, and we can click Edit Link. And that'll bring up this page here. And what we can do in the text box, not the link box, rather the first box, which is the text box, we can select all that text and delete it and type in link and hit apply. So now that same link is now behind a button that says link. And just to test it out, if we click this link here, it'll take us to the Google Finance page for Apple, which is great if you want to do a little bit more research on a particular stock. Now, if we want to make this link repeatable for any additional stocks that we might add, we'll have to make a couple changes here. First off, you'll notice that the ticker symbol is actually hard-coded into this URL. Just as an example, if we copy this cell and paste it down here, it'll be identical. It'll still go to the NASDAQ Apple Google Finance page. And that's not what we want. So let's delete that. Let's click cell J2, and let's edit that by deleting the ticker symbol from the URL, just the ticker symbol. So just from NASDAQ, Apple, and that's it. So now we have a Q equal sign at the end of that URL. And what we want to do is add an ampersand after the quotation mark. We'll add an ampersand or an and symbol, and we'll click cell A2, which will add cell A2. Now what that really did was it made a reference to cell A2 in that URL. So if we hover over this, you'll see that now the Apple ticker symbol is actually referenced sort of automatically within this cell. And we can test that again by clicking on it. And there we go again. Takes us to Apple's Google Finance page. Great. So that's our first row for one portfolio. Now let's, just for completeness and just to give another example and show you how quickly this can go, we'll do another holding that you might have, hypothetically. In this case, we'll do SPY, which is a S&P 500 index fund. It's a very popular index fund. And this is traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And the market symbol, or the market indicator for Google Finance within Google Sheets for the New York Stock Exchange is NYSE ARCA, and that's the market. And we'll hit colon, which again is the notation that we need to be using. And we'll type in SPY, which is the symbol that we want to look at, which is the Spider Index Fund for S&P 500. And we can go ahead and start copying down our formulas. Because we referenced cell A2 here, if we copy this down, it'll actually update, Google Sheets will actually update the cell to be A3 as we go down. So what I did was I just clicked this little blue box in the bottom right of this cell and drag that down. Cool. Next, we're going to want to put our quantity held, which will, again, is a manual process. In this case, let's just assume that we own 4 of the Spider Index Fund. And then for cost basis, let's type in, assuming that we bought this at $464.31. Let's make that assumption. Cool. So each share we bought at $464.31. And so now we need to calculate the total cost basis. We can do the same thing that we did with the name column. We can actually copy down this formula, and it'll automatically update the formula to match this row. So if we click this blue box in the bottom right, and we drag that down, there you go. Cool. Same thing here. We can do for column F. We can click this and drag it down. Again, same thing here. Click that little blue box, drag that down. Same thing. And same thing here. We can also do the same thing with the link. The link will automatically be updated. And you can see that here. If we hover over this, you'll see that the link now says SPY. Great. Let's do one more. Let's do Tesla. So I know that's traded on the NASDAQ market. So we'll type in NASDAQ, colon, and we'll type in TSLA, which is the ticker symbol for Tesla. Now there's actually a faster way that we can copy all of these formulas down. If we highlight from cells B3 all the way over to J3, we've now selected all of those formulas. We can drag that down, and it'll automatically be updated for cells in row 4. The only things we need to change are our fundamentals for quantity and cost basis. In this case, let's assume that we own 1 Tesla stock, and we bought it at $200. Cool. So remember, we talked about this before, but we should really be concerned about formatting our numbers into the appropriate number formats. So in this case, again, from D all the way through column H, those are all dollar amounts or currency values. So we can actually update that by clicking column D, the entire column, and clicking column and holding Shift while we click column H, which will select all of those columns. And we can format those as currency by clicking the Format as Currency button up here. Cool. So that's it for today. That's lesson 1. In the next lesson, we'll learn how to error check and automatically check for errors in our formulas to make sure that we're not making any critical mistakes as we're calculating out our gains and losses. I'll also be sharing this sample file so you can reference it as you're building out your portfolio. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you want to see more of these videos, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified for the next lesson, hit that bell icon and you'll be notified the next time I post a video. Thanks a lot. See you in the next one.